The massive crystal chamber buzzed with nervous energy as alien representatives from 12 powerful empires gathered around the circular meeting table. The air itself seemed thick with tension as holographic displays flickered to life, showing destroyed space stations and burning outposts scattered across the galaxy's outer rim. Admiral Korath stepped forward, his blue-scaled hands trembling slightly as he activated the main display. The towering reptilian warrior had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries, but today his usual confidence was nowhere to be found. Images of twisted metal and debris fields filled the air above the assembled delegates. Fellow council members, Korath began, his voice echoing through the vast hall. What you are about to see challenges everything we know about galactic warfare. He paused, letting his words sink in. 3 weeks ago, our monitoring stations detected a single warship operating in the outer territories. The vessel belongs to a species that calls itself human. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several delegates leaned forward in their seats, their various alien features showing confusion and curiosity. The humans were unknown to most of them, just another primitive species from some forgotten corner of space. These humans come from a small system called Sol, Korath continued. Our intelligence reports show they have no faster-than-light communication networks. They control only 7 colony worlds. Their weapons appear to be simple kinetic devices and primitive explosives. He gestured to the holographic display. Yet somehow, this single ship has destroyed 17 of our most heavily fortified outposts. The chamber erupted in disbelief. Voices rose in multiple alien languages as representatives demanded explanations. How could one ship accomplish what entire fleets had failed to do in the past? Elder Vexhai, the ancient leader of the Centaurian Empire, raised her webbed hand for silence. Her pale, ghostly appearance commanded respect from all present. She had lived for over 800 years and had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Show us this vessel, she commanded. The hologram shifted, displaying a sleek warship unlike anything in their databases. The human ship was smaller than most Imperial cruisers, with a predatory design that seemed to cut through space itself. Its dark hull bore the scars of recent battles, yet it moved with deadly grace through the wreckage of what had once been the heavily defended Station Gamma 7. Impossible, muttered Admiral Thekvar of the Trade Federation. His insect-like features clicked with agitation. No single vessel could breach installations protected by energy shields and automated defense systems. These frontier reports must be exaggerated. General Mordak of the warrior clans slammed his massive fist on the table. The bear-like alien's fur bristled with annoyance. Panicked colonists see monsters in every shadow. Young species always overestimate their capabilities. We have dealt with hundreds of such upstarts over the millennia. But Korath shook his head grimly. I thought the same thing initially. That is why I sent Commander Veltar with a standard patrol to investigate. The hologram changed again, showing the twisted remains of 6 Vorthak warships floating in space. Only one ship returned. Veltar's report was disturbing. The chamber fell silent. 6 ships destroyed by a single human vessel? Even the most skeptical delegates began to pay closer attention. What did this Veltar report? Asked Elder Vexhai, her ancient voice carrying a note of concern. Korath's scales seemed to pale as he recalled the commander's words. He claimed the humans fight unlike any species we have encountered. They do not follow standard combat protocols. They use tactics that are unpredictable, dangerous. When his ships pursued the human vessel into an asteroid field, it somehow disappeared and then attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. Stealth technology, suggested a delegate from the Techno Alliance. No, Korath replied. Veltar insists the ship used the asteroids themselves as cover, maneuvering through the field at speeds that should have been impossible. When they emerged, their weapons penetrated our energy shields as if they did not exist. The implications hung heavy in the air. Energy shields were the foundation of galactic military technology. Every species had developed weapons designed to overcome shields, and shields designed to stop those weapons. It was an ancient arms race that had reached a stable equilibrium centuries ago. Admiral Thekvar's compound eyes glittered with skepticism. Commander Veltar clearly panicked and fled at the first sign of real resistance. His testimony is worthless. Perhaps, agreed General Mordak. But the threat, real or imagined, cannot be allowed to continue. Other primitive species might get ideas above their station if word spreads that humans defeated Imperial forces. Elder Vexhai nodded slowly. The Galactic Accord must be maintained. Order must be preserved. She looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. What do you propose? A standard pacification force, suggested Mordak. Nothing elaborate. 7 ships should be more than sufficient to deal with these humans and demonstrate the price of defying galactic order. 7 ships to handle 1 primitive vessel, asked a delegate from the Crystal Worlds. Is that not excessive? Koratha's expression remained grim. After what happened to Veltar's squadron, I would recommend caution. But the majority of the council remained unconvinced. They had seen this pattern countless times before. A young species would venture into space, achieve a few minor victories against unprepared outposts, and then crumble when faced with organized imperial might. The humans would be no different. Very well, announced Elder Vex High. 7 ships it is. Admiral Korath, you will personally lead this force to the Sol system. Offer these humans one chance to surrender and accept their proper place in the galactic hierarchy. If they refuse. She left the threat unfinished. As the council session ended and delegates began filing out, none of them noticed the small detail that would have changed everything. In the corner of the holographic display, partially hidden by debris, was a single line of text from the human ship's identification beacon. It read, UES Defiance, Earth Defense Force Vessel 001 of 847. They thought they were dealing with humanity's only warship. They were about to discover it was merely the first. Captain James Morrison stood quietly on the bridge of the UES Defiance, his eyes fixed on the tactical display that showed 7 bright dots approaching from deep space. The alien ships had been detected by Earth's outer sensor networks 3 hours ago, and now they were close enough for detailed scans. Captain, called Lieutenant Emma Clark from her station, the alien vessels are maintaining a tight formation. Their energy signatures suggest advanced shielding and plasma-based weapons systems. She paused, studying her readings more carefully. Sir, these ships are much larger than anything in our databases. Morrison nodded calmly. At 42 years old, he had served in Earth's military for over 20 years, fighting in the colony wars and the asteroid mining conflicts. He understood that size did not always determine the outcome of a battle. Any response to our communication attempts? Communications Officer David Walsh shook his head. Nothing yet, Captain. We've been broadcasting the universal mathematical sequences for the past hour. Prime numbers, geometric progressions, physical constants. If they have any interest in peaceful contact, they should recognize these patterns. The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency around them. These men and women had trained together for 3 years, preparing for the day when humanity would encounter other intelligent species. Every simulation had emphasized the importance of peaceful first contact, but they were also ready for the alternative. Sir, reported Lieutenant Clark, I'm detecting energy buildup in their weapon systems. They're preparing to fire. Morrison's jaw tightened. 3 months earlier, human colonies in the outer systems had begun reporting attacks by unknown alien forces. Entire settlements had been destroyed, their populations either killed or taken prisoner. When Earth's government had tried to make contact with the attackers, their messages had been ignored. Captain, Walsh called out suddenly, incoming transmission. The computer is working on translation now. The bridge fell silent as they waited. After several tense minutes, Walsh looked up with a grim expression. Message decoded, sir. They're demanding our immediate and complete surrender to something called the Vorthak Empire. They want us to power down all weapons, submit to boarding, and prepare for transport to their capital world. Transport for what purpose? Asked Executive Officer Commander Robert Hayes. Walsh checked his translation again. To be evaluated for usefulness as slaves or laborious. They also mentioned something about tribute payments and resource extraction rights for our entire solar system. Morrison felt a cold anger building in his chest. These aliens had attacked human colonies without warning, murdered innocent civilians, and now they expected Earth to simply surrender everything humanity had built over centuries of struggle and sacrifice. Send our standard first contact response, Morrison ordered. Inform them that we represent the United Earth government and we wish to establish peaceful diplomatic relations. Request that they send ambassadors to discuss any territorial disputes through proper channels. Walsh transmitted the message and they waited. The response came back within minutes, and this time the translation was much clearer. The alien commander's words were broadcast directly to the bridge speakers in a cold, mechanical voice. Primitive species of Sol 3. You have one of your time periods to comply with Imperial demands. Surrender immediately or face complete annihilation. There will be no negotiation. There will be no discussion. Submit or die. The bridge crew exchanged glances. This was not how first contact was supposed to happen according to any of their training scenarios. Morrison had hoped to find allies among the stars, other civilizations that humanity could learn from and trade with. Instead, they had encountered an empire that viewed other species as nothing more than resources to be exploited. "Captain," reported Clark, "energy signatures are spiking. They're targeting us." Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. These people had families back on Earth, children who deserved to grow up free. He thought about the colonies that had already been destroyed, the thousands of humans who had died because they had been seen as inferior by these aliens. "All hands, general quarters," Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. "This is not a drill. We are about to engage hostile alien forces. All personnel to battle stations." Alarms began sounding throughout the ship as the crew prepared for combat. The Defiance had been designed specifically for this moment, incorporating every lesson humanity had learned from centuries of warfare. Unlike the aliens, who seemed to view combat as some kind of formal ritual, humans understood that survival meant using every advantage available. "Weapons systems online," reported Lieutenant Hayes from the tactical station. "All defensive measures ready." "Sir," Walsh called out, "they're broadcasting on all frequencies now. They're telling us we have 30 seconds to surrender or they will open fire." Morrison made his decision. These aliens had chosen war the moment they attacked the first human colony. They had made their intentions clear when they demanded humanity's complete submission. There would be no diplomatic solution because the aliens saw humans as nothing more than animals to be controlled. "Signal the fleet," Morrison ordered. "Execute Defensive Plan Alpha." What the aliens did not know was that the Defiance was not alone. Hidden throughout the asteroid belt were dozens of automated defense platforms and smaller human warships. Earth's military had learned long ago that the best defense was to make any attack as costly as possible for the aggressor. The first alien plasma bolt struck the Defiance's shields, and the battle for humanity's survival began. As Morrison watched the tactical display light up with weapons fire, he allowed himself a grim smile. These aliens were about to learn why Earth had never been successfully conquered by anyone. They were about to discover that humans did not fight fair, did not follow rules, and absolutely refused to surrender when their freedom was threatened. The lesson would be expensive for them to learn. Commander Veltar watched his tactical screen with growing confusion as the human warship suddenly vanished from his senses. One moment the primitive vessel had been there, absorbing plasma fire from his entire squadron, and the next it had simply disappeared into the dense asteroid field like it had never existed at all. "Impossible," muttered his weapons officer, a young Vorthak named Krelden. "No ship that size could navigate those rocks at such speed. The gravitational forces alone should have torn it apart." But Veltar had been a military commander for 60 years, and he knew when something was wrong. The human ship had not fled in panic as he expected. It had moved with purpose, following a path through the asteroids that seemed planned in advance. "Maintain formation," he ordered his squadron. "Pursue at maximum safe speed." The 7 Vorthak warships entered the asteroid field in perfect formation, their energy shields glowing blue as they deflected the smaller rocks. This was standard Imperial procedure, developed over centuries of space combat. Stay together, maintain shield integrity, and overwhelm the enemy with superior firepower. The first ship died without warning. The VNS Conquest simply exploded in a brilliant flash of light as 3 metal rods traveling at incredible speed punched through its shields like they were made of paper. The tungsten projectiles, each weighing several tons and moving at 12% of light speed, carried more kinetic energy than the ship's entire reactor output. "Report." Veltar shouted, his scaled hands gripping his command chair. "What happened to the Conquest?" "Unknown weapon system," replied Krelden, his voice shaking. "Some kind of kinetic projectile. Our shields had no effect against it." Veltar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Kinetic weapons were considered primitive by galactic standards. Every civilized species used energy-based weapons because they were more efficient and could be easily countered by proper shielding. But these human projectiles had somehow bypassed their defenses completely. "Sir," called out the sensor operator, "the human ship is moving again. It's behind us." The second Vorthak vessel, the VNS Domination, lasted slightly longer than the first. Captain Morrison had used the asteroid field to position his ship perfectly, emerging from cover at point-blank range. The human vessel fired a spread of nuclear-tipped missiles that detonated against the alien ship's hull in a series of brilliant explosions. What terrified Veltar was not just the destruction, but the precision. The humans had somehow analyzed his squadron's shield frequencies during the first exchange and were now broadcasting a jamming signal that left his ships completely vulnerable. Their own defensive systems were being turned against them. How are they doing this? Veltar demanded. How are they penetrating our networks? The answer came in the form of tiny objects swarming toward his third ship like angry insects. The human drones were no larger than a man's fist, but they moved with deadly intelligence, dodging the Vorthak point defense systems and attaching themselves to critical hull sections. When they exploded, they took the VNS Supremacist's engine core with them. Veltar realized with growing horror that the humans were not fighting like any civilized species he had ever encountered. They did not engage in formal combat or follow established rules of warfare. Instead, they used every dirty trick, every psychological advantage, every tactical deception they could think of. The fourth ship fell to a trap. The humans had somehow hacked into the Vorthak tactical network and were feeding false sensor data to his remaining vessels. The VNS Victory fired its main weapons at what it thought was the human ship, only to discover it had destroyed one of its own escort vessels instead. "Sir," his communications officer reported with a trembling voice, "the humans are broadcasting something on all frequencies." The main screen flickered to life, showing recorded footage of the previous battles. The humans were transmitting video of Vorthak ships being destroyed, of crews dying in the vacuum of space, of the mighty Imperial fleet being torn apart piece by piece. They wanted his remaining crews to see their failures, to know that death was coming for them all. It was psychological warfare at its most brutal. The humans were not content to simply destroy their enemies, they wanted them to despair first. The fifth ship died when its own weapons turned against it. Somehow, impossibly, the humans had gained control of the VNS Honor's targeting systems and redirected its plasma cannons inward. The ship tore itself apart from the inside while its crew watched helplessly. By the time the sixth vessel was destroyed by another swarm of those tiny killer drones, Veltar understood the terrible truth. These humans were not just another primitive species with lucky tactics. They were something far more dangerous, apex predators from a world that had forced them to become masters of warfare. "All remaining ships," he whispered into his communicator, then louder, "all ships, retreat immediately. Full power to engines. Get us out of this system." But there was only one ship left to hear his order, and as the human vessel emerged from the asteroid field like a nightmare made real, Veltar knew his report to the Council would be dismissed as cowardice. Who would believe that a single primitive ship could destroy an entire Vorthak squadron? The human ship moved alongside his damaged vessel but did not fire. Instead, a communication came through on standard frequencies. The voice was calm, professional, and utterly without emotion. "Commander Veltar of the Vorthak Empire. You will return to your superiors and deliver this message. Humanity desires peace, but we will defend ourselves against any aggression. The next force you send will not be shown mercy." As his crippled ship limped away from the battle zone, Veltar realized the humans had made a calculated decision to let him live. They wanted him to carry their message back to the Council. They wanted the galaxy to know what had happened here. They wanted the galaxy to be afraid. The emergency session of the Galactic Council erupted in chaos as Commander Veltar finished his report. His scaled face showed the strain of recent battles, and his uniform still bore scorch marks from his ship's damaged systems. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 12 major empires shouted in disbelief and anger. "Coward!" roared General Mordak, his massive fist slamming into the crystal table. "6 ships lost because you fled at the first sign of real combat." Admiral Thekvar's insect-like features clicked with annoyance. "This is clearly incompetence of the highest order. No single primitive vessel could accomplish what this commander claims." But Elder Vexhai raised her webbed hand for silence. Her ancient eyes studied Veltar carefully. She had lived for 8 centuries and had learned to recognize truth, even when it seemed impossible. "Commander, you swear these events happened exactly as described?" Veltar's voice was barely a whisper. "Every word, Elder. The humans fight like nothing we have ever encountered. They do not follow any civilized rules of warfare." Admiral Korath stepped forward, his blue scales darkening with shame. "The honor of the Vorthak Empire has been stained by this failure. We demand the right to restore our reputation with a proper military response." The chamber buzzed with agreement. The very idea that primitive humans could challenge galactic authority threatened the foundation of their civilization. For 3,000 years, the established empires had maintained order through superior technology and overwhelming force. If word spread that humans had defeated imperial forces, other young species might get similar ideas. "What do you propose?" asked Elder Vexhai. 3 full battle fleets, Korath declared. 200 ships representing the combined might of our allied empires. We will demonstrate the true price of defying galactic order. The vote was unanimous. Within days, the largest military force assembled in centuries began moving toward the small system called Sol. Admirals who had spent decades fighting minor border disputes now commanded vessels carrying enough firepower to destroy entire worlds. What the Council did not know was that humanity had spent every moment since the first attack preparing for exactly this scenario. Deep beneath Earth's surface, Admiral Catherine Wells stood in the central command bunker, watching tactical displays that showed the approaching alien armada. 200 contacts confirmed, reported Colonel Thomas Baker from his communication station. They're dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of our solar system in standard attack formation. Wells nodded calmly. She had commanded Earth's defenses during the colony wars and understood that successful military planning meant preparing for the worst possible outcome. Signal all defense platforms. Execute Plan Alexander. Across the solar system, hidden installations came to life. Automated shipyards buried deep in asteroids began launching vessels that had been secretly constructed over the past 8 months. Defense satellites activated weapons systems that had been disguised as simple communication relays. Most importantly, Earth's military academies had been working around the clock to analyze every piece of data from the first battle. Unlike the alien empires, which had enjoyed centuries of peace and limited conflict, humanity carried the institutional memory of total warfare. Every human military officer had studied the campaigns of Alexander, Caesar, Napoleon, and Patton. They understood logistics, combined operations, and psychological warfare in ways that these aliens could not imagine. The alien fleet commander, Admiral Zekthron of the Centaurian Empire, broadcast his surrender demands on all frequencies. His message was simple and direct: submit immediately or face complete annihilation. There would be no negotiation, no mercy for the primitive species that had dared to embarrass the galactic powers. The human response came from Admiral Wells herself, transmitted from Earth's capital. This is Admiral Catherine Wells of the United Earth Defense Force. We offer you one final opportunity to withdraw from our system and return home. Any hostile action will be met with appropriate defensive measures. Zekthron's reply was filled with contempt. Primitive creatures, you face the combined might of 12 galactic empires. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Wells allowed herself a thin smile as she turned to her staff. Gentlemen, ladies, these aliens have made their choice. Show them why Earth has never been successfully conquered by anyone. The battle began with the aliens' traditional opening move, a massive plasma bombardment designed to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer firepower. 200 ships fired simultaneously, creating a wall of destructive energy that should have vaporized anything in its path. Instead, the plasma bolt struck a network of gravitational deflectors that humanity had secretly deployed throughout the outer solar system. The alien weapons fire was bent away from Earth and redirected into empty space, leaving the planet completely unharmed. Before the aliens could react to this impossible defense, humanity's counterattack began. Thousands of kinetic projectiles launched from hidden positions struck the alien fleet with devastating precision. But these were not random attacks. Human tacticians had studied the enemy formation and identified the command ships, supply vessels, and communication nodes that held the fleet together. The aliens watched in growing horror as their carefully organized battle formation collapsed into chaos. Ships lost contact with their commanders. Supply lines were severed. Weapons systems failed as human hackers penetrated their networks and turned their own technology against them. But the most terrifying aspect of the human attack was its psychological component. As alien ships died in brilliant explosions, human forces broadcast recordings of previous battles on all frequencies. They showed the destruction of Veltar's squadron, the burning remains of frontier outposts, the faces of human colonists who had been murdered in earlier raids. The message was clear: this is what happens to those who threaten humanity. Admiral Zekthron tried desperately to maintain control of his disintegrating fleet, but human tactics were unlike anything in their military manuals. The Earth forces fought with a combination of advanced technology and primitive savagery that left the aliens completely unprepared. When the battle ended 4 to 7 minutes later, only 19 alien ships remained intact enough to attempt escape. The rest floated as wreckage in the cold vacuum of space, testimony to humanity's refusal to be conquered. As Zekthron's damaged flagship limped away from the Sol system, he knew his report would change everything. The galaxy would have to accept a new reality: humanity was no longer a primitive species to be ignored or enslaved. They were a military force that could challenge any empire. The crystal chamber that had once buzzed with the confident voices of galactic powers now sat in stunned silence. Elder Vexhai stared at the holographic reports floating before her, each one telling the same impossible story. 3 battle fleets, 200 of the galaxy's most advanced warships, had been destroyed by a single primitive species in less than 1 hour. Admiral Zekthron stood before the assembled council, his once proud uniform now torn and stained with the smoke of battle. His hands shook as he activated the tactical recordings from his flagship's final moments. Honorable members, what you are about to see will change everything we believe about warfare. The hologram showed the human counterattack in terrifying detail. Thousands of kinetic projectiles moving at impossible speeds, tearing through energy shields like they were made of tissue. Alien ships turning their weapons on each other as human hackers seized control of their systems. Most disturbing of all, the psychological warfare, human forces broadcasting recordings of previous alien defeats while they destroyed ship after ship. They knew exactly where to hit us, Zekthron continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Command ships, supply vessels, communication relays. They had studied our formation and identified every weakness before we even fired our first shot. General Mordak slammed his massive fist on the table, but the gesture seemed hollow now. Impossible. No primitive species could have such tactical knowledge. But Admiral Korath stepped forward, his blue scales pale with realization. They are not primitive, General. That is what we fail to understand. He gestured to the holographic display. Look at their weapons, their tactics, their coordination. These humans have been preparing for this moment their entire history. The surviving commanders began sharing their observations, each report adding another piece to a terrifying puzzle. The humans did not fight like any civilized species. They used deception, misdirection, and psychological warfare as natural as breathing. They adapted their tactics in real time, learning from each exchange and immediately applying new strategies. They broadcast recordings of our defeats while they were killing us, reported Captain Velnuth of the Sirius Alliance, his voice hollow with trauma. They wanted us to know we were going to die. They wanted us to be afraid. Elder Vexhai felt a chill run through her ancient body as the truth began to crystallize. These humans were not another young species lucky enough to stumble upon advanced technology. They were something far more dangerous, apex predators who had spent their entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of killing. Tell us about their world, she commanded. What kind of planet produces such creatures? The intelligence reports painted a picture that made even the hardened military commanders uncomfortable. Earth was a death world where survival meant constant struggle. The humans had evolved alongside massive predators, survived ice ages that would have destroyed most species, and fought endless wars against each other that had forged them into the perfect military machine. Every human conflict added to their knowledge, explained the Council's chief analyst, a pale creature from the archive worlds. Tribal warfare taught them small unit tactics. Their ancient empires developed logistics and supply chains. Their global wars showed them the importance of intelligence gathering and technological adaptation. Admiral Thekvar's compound eyes glittered with dawning horror. While our civilizations grew among the stars with unlimited resources and no natural enemies, they were fighting for every scrap of food, every piece of territory, every breath of air on a world that tried to kill them daily. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. Every species represented in the Council had evolved in the vast emptiness of space or on peaceful worlds where cooperation was the key to survival. They had developed magnificent technology, created beautiful art, and built lasting civilizations based on order and mutual benefit. But they had never learned to fight for their very existence. Humans were different. They came from a world where only the strongest, smartest, and most adaptable survived. Every generation had been tested by war, famine, disease, and natural disasters. Those who lived long enough to reproduce passed on not just their genes, but their hard-won knowledge of combat and survival. What do we do? Asked a delegate from the Crystal Worlds, his voice trembling with fear. The answer came from an unexpected source. The chamber's main communication array activated, and a holographic image appeared in the center of the room. Captain James Morrison materialized before them, his image transmitted from the bridge of the UES Defiance now orbiting their capital world. Morrison looked around the assembled representatives with calm, professional eyes. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, I bring greetings from the United Earth Government and an offer of peace. Elder Vexhai found her voice first. Peace? After destroying our fleets. Your fleets attacked human colonies without warning, Morrison replied evenly. They murdered innocent civilians and demanded our complete surrender. We defended ourselves, nothing more. The simple truth of his words hit the Council like a physical blow. They had been the aggressors. They had started this conflict by viewing humans as primitive animals to be controlled. The devastating defeats they had suffered were the natural consequence of their own arrogance. What are your terms? Vexhai asked, already knowing the answer would reshape galactic civilization. Morrison's expression remained neutral, but there was steel in his voice. Humanity asks only for recognition as a sovereign species with the right to exist peacefully. In return, we offer our protection to any civilization that wishes to live without fear of conquest or exploitation. As the words sank in, the council members realized the cosmic irony of their situation. In a universe where most species had evolved in peace, humanity's gift for war would make them not conquerors, but guardians. The same deadly skills that had destroyed their fleets would now protect the galaxy from any force that threatened its stability. Elder Vexhai closed her ancient eyes and spoke the words that would echo through history. On behalf of the Galactic Council, we accept your terms and welcome humanity as protectors of galactic peace. The age of human dominion had begun, not through conquest, but through the simple recognition that sometimes, the greatest peacemakers are those who understand war best.